What is going on, everybody? It is Monday, March the 1st, and that means it's time for my news radar. By the way, everything on this channel is community supported, so if you could take a moment and consider becoming a member by clicking that join button down below, perhaps becoming a patron on Patreon, or even just leaving a comment, hitting like, subscribing, anything like that you can do does help the channel. Thanks. So a little while ago, I made a video talking about what we knew about the upcoming Surface Duo 2, Surface 2.0, Surface Zeta, whatever you want to call it. And the short list of things that we knew was pretty short. There's not a lot that they, look, they've not announced the things. There's not a lot of stuff out there that we know for sure. We can probably add one more thing to that list. And granted, it's not something that should shock you, but it's something we can pretty well confirm. In that video, I stated it's pretty obvious to expect 5G to be a feature that the Surface Duo didn't have, that Surface Zeta will have. And thanks to a job listing at careers.microsoft.com, we have pretty close to confirmation of that exact thing happening. This job listing says Microsoft Devices software team is on a journey to create new experiences with Surface Duo. We believe in building devices that fully express the Microsoft vision. Fundamental part of our strategy is having desirable and powerful devices that enable the experiences that people want. In the responsibilities, though, and this is where we're looking, it will encompass working across a team of high-impact individuals who are designing and coding RF drivers, RF board bring-up, introducing LTE and 5G technologies. Blah, 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 blah. On Surface Duo devices. So we have a job listing here for someone that is going to be able to work on 5G compatibility on Surface Duo. And if you dig through the qualifications and all the rest of this, there's not really anything else there that's going to blow your mind, nothing that's super shocking. But we do know from that they are at least hiring someone to work on bringing 5G to the Surface Duo. Now, obviously, if the Surface Duo uses any of the newer, or you could say current, SoCs like the Snapdragon 888, they pretty much all have 5G built into them at this point. So again, not a shocking thing unless you're expecting the Surface Zeta to also be running the Snapdragon 855, which would have made, I think, everyone on the internet, their heads would have exploded and they would have all died. So I don't think Microsoft wants to kill everyone on the internet. So not a huge shock that 5G is coming to Surface Zeta, but it does appear to be the case. Personally, I don't really care all that much because 5G is not really a thing I care about. Jesse's Pixel 5 has 5G, my Duo has 4G, and if you stood in my backyard in Knoxville and you speed tested them both, my Duo is actually faster somehow than her Pixel. The only advantage that she has is that the Duo is missing some bands that T-Mobile uses in more rural areas. And as I live in Knoxville, Tennessee, and some of the outskirts are rural areas, there are times that I have no signal and she still has LTE, which is something that I'm slightly jealous of at times. But at the end of the day, for me, can I go anywhere pretty much and stream video, stream whatever I want to download? Yeah, it's fine. It's not slow. LTE's plenty fast. Latency's plenty low. You can game on it if you want to. It's actually quite good. I remember back in the day, the idea of gaming on mobile data was just insane. Like, that was inconceivable. And LTE is so much better now that it's not even a weird thing to talk about. So 5G's cool. We'll be getting 5G, but is it something that you should be like, screaming from the rooftops and excitement about? Probably not. So let's move from Android on your mobile device to Android on your home computer, because we have a small update here from Windows latest talking about Project Latte, which is Microsoft's attempt to bring Android app support into the Windows ecosystem. One of the biggest reasons that Windows Phone failed was because of what people call the app gap, or just to put it simply, the lack of applications. Your OS can be fantastic, but if it doesn't have apps, it's not going to succeed for very long. And that's what's happened with several of Microsoft's attempted software launches. And right now, if you go to the Microsoft Store, it's pretty crappy. There's some games in there, but there's really not a lot to bring you in there. I don't really go to the Microsoft Store very often because there's not really a good reason to. However, Project Latte aims to bring actual Android app compatibility straight into Windows. Now, this will be built on top of the Windows subsystem for Linux, and it will initially support apps published by developers in the Windows Store. So basically, if you're an Android developer and you think, I want my app to be on Windows, why not? It's going to take 2 seconds to port it over. Bada bing, bada boom, send it over to Windows, and it's in the store. You can download it, and it runs on Windows 10. Sounds really cool because it basically just lets you convert an existing app straight over to Windows. Now, down the line, they will have the ability to essentially sideload apps straight, get an APK from APK Mirror, maybe rip it off your phone and bring it over to Windows 10. That's something that we've heard some rumors about as well. The biggest downside of this is that we won't have support for Google's APIs. It says here, Microsoft plans to replace Google APIs with Windows APIs wherever possible in these side-loaded apps. And there's a lot of things that Google API handles. So like if you build an app and it says something as simple as just a reference to Google Maps in it, well, that app isn't going to work because it's not going to have Google's APIs. So perhaps Microsoft could write their own APIs that would see someone's app seeing Google Maps and swap it out for Bing Maps or something like that. That is something that they're going to have to definitely work on. However, keep in mind that that's maybe not as big of a deal breaker as you might think, because if you look at the Kindle Fire Android tablets, well, they use the Amazon App Store and they don't have access to these things either. And they do really well. A lot of games will still work and a lot of apps will still work because not every app uses Google's APIs. And hopefully Microsoft can fill in that gap with their own work as well. As mentioned here, Gmail, Google Photos, Play Store, that stuff just isn't going to work. But again, like they say here, most APK files are expected to work without modification, and little effort will be needed to bring Android apps to the desktop operating system. And personally, I love the idea of picking up my Surface Pro 7 and launching apps that are Android apps, essentially. That could be really, really useful because it could take what's so good about Chromebooks sometimes, being able to have a desktop with a full-fledged web browser and some Android apps that I like, and it could replicate that experience on Windows, which could be a really, really positive thing for Windows. Hopefully we won't have to wait too long to get our hands on Android apps inside Windows, as this article is expecting a preview to go live sometime later this year. And let's wrap things up with a new report about the attempt Apple is apparently making to bring out an iPhone that has 0 ports. Obviously, they killed the headphone jack a long time ago, and now it looks as though the Lightning port may not be long for this world either. But a big question a lot of people might have is, what happens if my iPhone dies and needs to be recovered? Well, how is that going to work? Well, apparently they're working on several different methods here in this article from MS Power User to be able to recover your iPhone. They're working on one that's recovery over Wi-Fi. So basically, if your iPhone has died, it will send out a Wi-Fi beacon that you'll be able to connect to with another device to then send the recovery files over. This is apparently the leading contender, but it is 2.5 times slower than a wired recovery. They're also experimenting with something, the similar type of thing to that, but using Bluetooth instead of Wi-Fi, as well as using something wired using hidden pogo pads that could be hidden somewhere like in the SIM slot, which is similar, as they reference here, to what's on one of the Apple Watches. Now, I don't think we're going to see a portless iPhone for a couple of years at least. These things are still a ways off. And personally, I think that they're going to utilize their MagSafe for connection as well, because we've already got magnetic USB-C cables that can do data transfer and things like that. So I'm not entirely sure why they're doing experimentation with wireless recovery and things like that. You'd think they could just work out something using MagSafe, and maybe that's the direction that they'll go down the line. I think the more interesting thing here is just the general idea of having a portless phone. I mean, maybe that would help with waterproofing. I guess you still have holes there where your speakers are, but I'm not really sure why you would want a phone with no ports at all. What's the advantage of doing this? If it's just purely aesthetic, that seems silly. That seems to be quite form over function in my mind. And if it's just a way to sell you additional accessories, well, I guess that makes sense in the Apple ecosystem if you think about it that way. Guys, what do you think about a phone with no ports? Does this seem insane to you? It kind of does to me. Guys, that's all the news I have for you today. Be sure to check back every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for the next edition of News Radar. And until next time, stay nerdy, my friend.